Well, I did have a plan for one. Like I said, I've been thinking about preaching up here for a while now. And one, one big thing I think you guys should all know, and especially just happened this weekend. I had an aunt that passed, and I was at her funeral, is loss, but also leads into hope. So, let's see where I can start. I was stationed in San Diego, California for most of my time, and it's difficult, normal, well, I say normal, but we were deployed on and off all the time. I think at my 2.5-year mark, I had 2 years of sea time, like on the ocean for 2 years straight. And so that was difficult, but we had a lot of guys that could help us get through like the worst of it. You know, you kind of lean on your friends, you lean on everyone that's near to you, and you can usually get through everything. Well, I think the most difficult time I had, besides the COVID deployment, and I'll touch on that in a second, like what I was thinking, just so we have a little bit of story. Actually, I'll just go into it now. But when COVID first hit, they told us, like, oh yeah, like don't worry, it's only affecting people that are like 55 and older. I'm like, well, pretty much everyone on the Leis side of the family is 55 and older, so I did not. And then I had not a clue what to think about that. I was just like, well, this isn't good. And they ended up clearing up a lot of stuff, but that was still a hard time. But aside from that time, I think the hardest time that we went through was through PSNS Naval Shipyard. Now in Washington, if you didn't know, it rains like 86% of the year, and it's overcast about that same amount of time. But other than that, when it's sunny out, it's really pretty, like the evergreen forests and stuff like that. Well, my first year, it started getting gray and rainy in about September, and I didn't see the sun again until May. There was like a day or two where there was like a clear day that came out. So, and every day, the sun didn't come out really until May. And I think it rained from September to January straight. Like, didn't let up really one bit. I think there might have been a few times where it stopped, but pretty much every time I was walking to work, I was getting rained on. And it was just like not like really hard pouring rain, but just that nice misting. And by the time you get to work, you're soaked. And so you're just already not in a good mood. Well, starting out with that, the work was hard, long hours, but things were kind of going as planned. But as we started getting closer to the time that we were supposed to leave, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't done yet. And that's when the hours shifted. And for the last 8 months in that winter time frame too, like the majority of it, we shifted to 13-day work weeks. Every other Sunday was a day off, and we worked 14-hour days. And I did that for 8 months straight. And in that time frame, we had I saw a lot of addiction happen. I saw a lot of, there was one guy that started using cocaine to stay awake because he was our planning manager, and that did not last too long, but they caught him. But it's something difficult that we go through, and you start losing a lot. You start losing sight of who you are and what you are, and kind of what the overall plan is, right? Going into it, I knew I needed to get the ship in the water. Well, I will admit too, I had lost sight of who I was to the point where people would be like, hey, we need you to do this. I'm like, this way and this way and this way. And I'm like, well, I got it done. And they're like, well, how'd you do it? I'm like, don't worry about it. Now that used to work because I knew I was doing it right, but towards the end of things, there was a few times where I cut corners and probably avoid a little bit of safety doing it. But that time, yeah. So what else? It was yeah, you started losing sight of, like, people started losing sight of who they were. And one of my best friends had used to ask me about church and stuff like that. And I used to tell him, like, hey, this is like what I do. And he's like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. I wasn't raised that way or whatever, this and that. Like, I don't know if I can put my heart out on a line for this and that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna keep doing my thing. And throughout that time, I lost sight of who I was. I lost sight of a lot of good things. But I did go to church every Sunday. And if I was present there, like, mentally, I probably wasn't. I was physically there some days, mentally, most days probably not. Thinking about work or what we were gonna do over the weekend, if we were, like, who was having to get together or whatever. But I tried to go every Sunday, and he was my roommate also as well. And one day he came up to me, and it was probably during the worst of all of it. He came up to me crying, and he said, I get it. And this is backtracking a little bit. This was also part of the time where I think I had missed church for like 2 weeks in a row, and I wasn't doing too hot. But he came up to me, and I was thinking about missing for a 3rd week in a row. And he came up to me crying, and he said, I get it. I get it now. You've been able to go to church every Sunday for the past, I think this is my 4-year mark in, for the past, and he's known me for the whole 4 years I was in. So he had been going to church every day every Sunday for the past 4 years. And I never was able to understand it, and I get it now. And it wasn't because I preached at him, or told him things, or gave him scripture to read, or I just, honestly, or even prayed for him. I think I prayed for him a little bit here and there, but it wasn't even like an everyday thing, like as much as I should have been. But just being that example for him was pretty great, and I watched him change completely. Like, he stopped drinking so much, he started going to church with me, and like, he would send me TikToks and Instagram videos of like Bible verses that he thought were really cool, and I started getting to teach him all the stuff that you kind of take for granted as growing up as a Christian. You hear all the Bible stories about like David and Goliath, or like Noah's Ark, but if you look at them from like an adult perspective, those stories are really cool. And I started getting to tell him about King David and how much alike he is like with us, like being a young man in the world, and how like he sent off like the girl that he really liked, like he sent off her boyfriend to war so that he could have a chance at her. It's nobody's perfect, and he said like he really liked King David. That's what brought him up. So he thought it really related to him too, and it does. So it's really cool to see how just being an example for people can pan out. Wayne, do you have anything else? Anyone have questions? I've got a lot of other stories, and I definitely do plan on coming back here and having a little bit better planned out, maybe some slides or something.
What brought you to the military?
What brought me to the military? Well, my dad and all my other family members were Army, and I wanted to serve my country, and 2, I wanted to see the world, travel and get a little bit of experience. And so like the next question is like, well, why Navy? Right? Everyone was Army. My dad told me to learn a trade, and because he had seen me, like my earliest memory with him, like that of him teaching me things was, I was like 6, and he gave me like an old push mower that didn't work, and he said, hey, mow the lawn. And I'm like, can I use the riding mower, or like put a sack of flour on the seat so I can get it to the sensor to work? He's like, no, and that's my new riding mower. Absolutely not, you're not riding that. They'd go push the backyard that was smaller. I'm like, well, that doesn't work, and he's like, figure it out. So he said, go Navy, go like learn a trade, be a mechanic, and he was right. Yeah, I definitely plan on coming up here, like some slides, something a little bit more planned out. I did have a 3-point ceremony. I did have 3 points. I touched on one of the points, but maybe not spoil it for you. I'll get those all planned out, and we'll see you soon.